My name is Delaney Hart, and I've spent most of my adult life being easy to overlook. That night on the rooftop, I almost slipped past unnoticed again, until someone powerful made sure I didn't. It was one of those curated corporate cocktail nights. Glass panels instead of rails, imported wine flowing too freely, the skyline of the city glittering below like success could be bottled. My sister, Mallory, was in her element. Charcoal heels, red lips, words like gosh, Q, for growth, and brand architecture dancing off her tongue like they were native. People laughed easily around her, performances thriving off mutual pretense. I stood near the back, club soda in hand, wearing a navy dress I'd owned for 6 years. Clean, simple, unimpressive. I didn't come to impress. I came because she invited me. "It'll be fun," she said. "You should meet people who can inspire you to level up." When she spotted me, her smile widened, too wide. "Everyone," she called out, "this is my sister. She fixes stuff." The pause was intentional. Wires, old appliances, you name it, she's a walking user manual. Chuckles. A raised eyebrow or two. I nodded. I didn't flinch. But before she could add another punchline, the elevator chimed. The air shifted. Conversations quieted just enough. A woman in a burgundy pantsuit stepped onto the rooftop. Adrienne Locke, CEO of Brightcore Energy. She didn't pause, didn't scan. She walked straight to me. "Delaney," she said clearly, "I've been hoping I'd meet you." Behind me, Mallory choked on her sip of wine. That was the moment the room forgot who they were supposed to laugh at, and remembered someone they hadn't seen clearly before. Not because I demanded attention, but because the truth had finally decided to speak. And this time, it walked in wearing a name badge and a $3,000 pantsuit. There was a time when my name used to mean something in our family. Not pride exactly, but promise. Growing up in a small Ohio town where last names carried weight and college admissions were whispered like folklore, I was the one who would get out. The girl who won the regional science fair 3 years in a row. The girl who received the full-ride scholarship to Marlowe Institute of Technology, majoring in systems engineering. The girl who made guidance counselors teary-eyed and gave commencement speeches that teachers still quoted years after. Mallory was just my kid sister then, 4 years younger, braces and glitter notebooks, asking to borrow my graphing calculator because it looked smarter. She'd sit at the edge of my room while I filled out internship applications and repeat my words like they were gospel. "Delaney's going to change the world," she used to tell our relatives. "I'm just going to copy her." And for a while, that version of me felt real. Until Mom got sick. It started with headaches, then confusion. By the time the neurologist used the word inoperable, I was already halfway through my second semester at Marlowe. I came home for spring break and never really went back. The plan was to defer a semester, help out, return in fall, but fall came and went, then winter. And then one morning, Mom just didn't wake up. Dad unraveled, quietly, steadily, like a house with too many termites. He stopped working. He stopped shaving. Some days, he forgot my name. The silence at home was no longer peaceful. It was dead weight. Mallory clung to school like a lifeline. Honors dance team, AP classes, student government. She buried her grief in motion. I buried mine in function. Lights flickered, faucets dripped, outlets sparked, and when the repairman's invoice crossed 3 digits, I figured I'd try it myself. One YouTube video led to another. I shocked myself once, burned the carpet, tripped the circuit twice. But I kept going. There's a strange peace in troubleshooting something with your hands. In a world that made no sense anymore, a broken rice cooker at least had a manual. My hands became steadier than my heart. I patched walls, rewired plugs, recaulked the tub. I became the structure I couldn't find anywhere else. By the time Mallory graduated and left for college on a state grant, I was already running the household. Cooking, paying bills with a front desk job at the town's only clinic, managing Dad's appointments, making sure he remembered how to take his meds. I don't think she meant to leave it all on me, but she didn't look back either. Marlowe revoked my scholarship after 2 years of deferral. I didn't contest it. By then, I was making side money, fixing neighbors' broken appliances. Someone's blender, another's garage door sensor. They started calling me Fix-It Laney, The name stuck. Dad passed 5 years later, quietly, like Mom. That house, that ghost of a family, became too heavy to stay in. I sold it and moved across the state. Small town, cheap rent, a garage space that came with a dented metal desk, and one loyal raccoon I bribed with granola bars. I opened HeartFix Solutions with a bucket of savings and a painted sign that flaked in the rain. It wasn't impressive, but it was mine. I didn't tell Mallory. We weren't estranged, just edited. Texts every few holidays, photos of her new haircut, a forwarded article once where her name appeared under marketing managers to watch. I replied with a thumbs up. She never asked what I did anymore. And I didn't volunteer. What would I say? I help grandmothers fix their toasters because they can't afford new ones. I patch up electric griddles and replace thermal fuses in space heaters no one else wants to touch. I make things work again when everyone else throws them away. Not exactly LinkedIn-worthy, but I slept through the night and woke up feeling useful. That counted for something. Still, sometimes I wondered what she told people about me. Did I become a faded anecdote? Did she say I used to be smart? That I just never bounced back? And yet, I never hated her for how she saw me. What Mallory saw was the surface. She never saw the woman who soldered her way out of grief, who stitched meaning into circuit boards and purpose into resistor diagrams. She saw a sister who didn't climb, so she assumed I had fallen. But I hadn't. I'd just chosen a different direction. And while her ladder rose higher with every glowing update and title bump, I was still standing. Still fixing, still building, not up, but solid. I named the shop HeartFix Solutions, not because I thought it sounded professional, but because I couldn't think of anything else that felt honest. My name was on the storefront, hand-painted, slightly uneven. I didn't have branding consultants or social media interns. Just me, a second-hand cedering station, and shelves made from salvaged wood. The shop was tucked between a laundromat and an old shoe repair store, the kind of place you'd miss unless you were looking for it, or unless your microwave just started smoking and you couldn't afford a new one. My first customer was a retired schoolteacher who walked in with a broken fan and a skepticism she didn't bother to hide. She left smiling. Word spread faster than I expected. People came in with stories they didn't realize they were telling. The grandfather who brought in a malfunctioning radio he used to play jazz on every Sunday. The exhausted mother whose coffee maker had gone dead the same morning. Her youngest started daycare. The kid with a fried Xbox who begged me not to tell his parents what caused the burn mark inside. It didn't take long for me to realize that I wasn't just fixing things. I was restoring little pieces of people's lives. Quiet, often invisible pieces. And the thing is, they noticed. Not all of them, not every time, but enough. I charged fairly. I explained what I did in plain language. I kept spare parts labeled in mason jars because it helped me think. I installed an old percolator in the corner and offered free coffee to anyone who came in. Cheap beans, but hot and real. Eventually, I hired Sam. He was a retired electrician with calloused hands and the kind of patience you can't teach. He started as a customer who refused to let me fix his drill, until he watched me take it apart, lay out the pieces in a perfect grid, and quietly rebuild the thing like it was nothing. He came back the next day with a second broken tool and an offer to work part-time. Said it felt good to be around someone who respected the details. Then came Miles, 16 years old, tall, awkward, always smelling faintly of engine grease. He wandered in one summer, asking if I ever needed help. I asked what he could do. He shrugged and said, "I learn fast." He wasn't wrong. Within a month, he could disassemble a food processor blindfolded. I paid him by the hour, more than minimum wage, and made him clock in like it mattered, because it did. By year 3, HeartFix was profitable. Not extravagant, not Instagrammable, but steady. We had recurring clients, some contracts. Small businesses started sending over equipment, blenders, industrial fans, even a small batch of faulty barcode scanners from a warehouse upstate. It wasn't until I saw the name NovaStream Logistics on a shipping label that I paused. I'd heard of them before. third-party distribution for several mid-sized tech companies. Nothing fancy, just back-end systems and fulfillment. I kept seeing that name, again and again. Same types of devices, same labels. Then one afternoon, I peeled back a barcode to clean the housing of a burnt-out inventory tablet. Underneath was a manufacturer ID, BrightCore Energy. I stared at it longer than I needed to. The coincidence was too neat. Mallory worked in BrightCore's marketing division. It was her face in their LinkedIn campaigns, her voice on those Meet the Team reels, her name attached to press releases about their customer-centric innovation. And here I was, sitting on the floor of my repair shop, elbow deep in the back-end failure her department likely never even knew existed. I didn't say anything. Not to Sam, not to Miles, not to Mallory. It wasn't like I was directly contracted. The logistics company had probably subbed the repair work to another vendor who then outsourced to us. Just a name in a long supply chain. An invisible hand holding a wrench. Still, the irony stayed with me. All those dinners where Mallory talked about scaling and growth metrics, smirking at the fact that I still used manual invoices and fixed things with actual screwdrivers. All those times she laughed about legacy tech like it was a slur. And all the while, her own company's equipment was quietly finding its way to my shop, where I patched it together piece by piece. There was something deeply satisfying in that, though I didn't let myself dwell on it. Truth doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. Sometimes it's more powerful when it simply exists. What I built wasn't glamorous, but it had weight. We had systems, bins for intake and outtake, detailed logs, repair histories, organized by SKU. Sam handled diagnostics. Miles handled basic disassembly and soldering. I did the final tests and calibration. And we always delivered on time. I didn't go out much. I didn't post photos of my workspace. I didn't join local entrepreneur networks or sign up for women in tech panels. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need applause to measure progress. I watched people walk into my shop broken. Sometimes it was their appliance. Sometimes it was their day. And walk out a little lighter. That was enough. Mallory, meanwhile, continued to rise. Every so often, I'd get a link from a mutual cousin. Mallory made the list! Did you see this article about BrightCore's new campaign? Her photos always looked flawless. City skyline in the background, clean lines, sleek dresses. She looked like someone who had never cried in a parking lot or eaten gas station peanuts for dinner. I didn't envy her, but sometimes I did wonder if she'd ever ask what I'd been building. She didn't. Even when we talked, which wasn't often, it stayed on the surface. She assumed I was still scraping by, still figuring things out. I let her assume. Because here's what I've learned. When people have already decided where to place you in their story, arguing only cements the position. Silence, on the other hand, lets the truth build quietly behind the curtain. Until one day, it steps out fully formed, and no one can look away. That day was coming. I didn't know how, but I knew the air was shifting. Because the thing about building something with your own hands is that eventually, someone important is going to notice how well it holds. The first time we got a bulk order, I thought it was a mistake. A flatbed truck pulled up with a crate of malfunctioning handheld meters used for industrial energy audits. Nothing fancy, but more than our usual trickle of personal devices. The order slip listed a repair quota and a deadline. The return address was NovaStream Logistics. I triple-checked the paperwork, called the contact number, and asked if they'd meant to send it to us. They had. The work was meticulous, repetitive, but satisfying. Replace a corrupted sensor module, realign the thermal contact points, reprogram the firmware. We had it down to a science. Sam created an intake map, Miles coded a custom spreadsheet that tracked batch serials and repair rates. We hit every deadline. Quality control was tight, no returns. After the third shipment, they started paying faster. I still didn't connect the dots to BrightCore, not immediately. By then, I wasn't digging for answers. I was focused on growth, on precision, on making sure we could handle the volume without compromising our values. No shortcuts, no duct tape solutions. We fixed it right, or we sent it back untouched. Then, one night, I stayed late filing invoices. I had a habit of checking every serial number manually. Old habit from the early days. Redundant now, but comforting. That's when I saw it again. A barcode with the prefix BCE 790. Bright Core Energy, again. I sat back in my chair and let the realization settle. These weren't just devices from a logistics firm. They were Brightcore's equipment, repaired by our hands, signed off by our reports, delivered through a chain of subcontractors. I wasn't just fixing for a client. I was quietly propping up a part of their field operations, Mallory's company. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt invisible. Not in a bad way, not small, just intentionally unseen. Like the foundation of a building no one thinks about until the ground shakes. We weren't getting plaques or praise. We were just expected to function. And we did. The irony was almost too clean. My sister's job depended on devices I repaired. Devices she probably walked past every day without ever wondering who kept them running. It was poetic. Not sweet, not bitter, just precise. I didn't tell her, not out of spite. It just didn't matter. She wouldn't have understood what it meant. Mallory spoke in campaigns, projections, ROI. I spoke in voltmeters, circuit diagrams, and the quiet hum of a machine coming back to life. But someone noticed. It started with a small note at the bottom of a forwarded email chain. A request from Executive Ops Tier 2, asking about the consistency of repairs from one of their third-level subs. A name floated up in the chain. HeartFix Solutions. The forwarded message came to us as a referral. No direct contact, just an increase in volume and a request to prioritize Group 9 equipment. We did. And then, 3 weeks later, a courier dropped off a sealed envelope with no sender. Inside was a thank you card. Simple, navy blue, thick cardstock. No logo, just one line typed cleanly in the center. Your consistency hasn't gone unnoticed. No signature. I held that card for a long time. Sam raised an eyebrow when I showed him. You think it's from someone high up? Maybe, I said. Or someone who reads diagnostics reports. Miles joked. Maybe it's the CEO, secret admirer style. We laughed. I put the card in the drawer next to Mara's business card from 2 years earlier. Another silent nod from the world I wasn't supposed to be part of. That was the thing. We were never supposed to be in the room. Not officially, not directly. We weren't on the organizational charts or the glossy brochures. But when systems failed, our number got called. And we answered. The deeper irony was how proud Mallory was of that company. How often she bragged about their efficiency, their field reliability, their flawless supply chain management. I remember watching one of her promotional videos once. She was standing in front of a solar array, gesturing like a politician, talking about zero failure targets. I almost snorted. We'd fixed 4 units from that very array that same week. That's not to say she didn't work hard. Mallory had always been relentless, strategic, image-conscious in a way I never understood. She treated her career like an audition tape that never ended. Always one more viewer, one more gatekeeper to impress. And maybe that's what she needed. Maybe that's how she survived. But it wasn't how I lived. I worked with my hands. My team got paid fairly. We repaired what mattered. And we didn't put our names on things we didn't stand behind. So when Mallory called me out of the blue and said, "You should come to the company cocktail mixer next month," I thought she'd dialed the wrong number. "Why?" I asked flatly. "Why not?" she said lighthearted. "You never go to these things. Might be good for you. Meet people, network a bit." I let the silence hang long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I said, "Okay." She hesitated. "You will?" "Yes." I could hear the surprise in her voice. Maybe even something close to suspicion. "Well, that's great," she said quickly. "It'll be good to see you." I hung up, stared at the wall, and exhaled. Because I knew what that invitation meant. It wasn't kindness. It was a performance. She wanted me to play a role. To be the older sister who showed up in thrift store shoes, smiling politely, while everyone asked, "And what do you do again?" She wanted to win by comparison, and I was going to let her try. Not because I needed her validation, not because I wanted to prove her wrong, but because the foundation she'd been standing on for years was about to remind her who built it. And this time, it wasn't going to stay quiet. I hadn't been to anything resembling a corporate event in over a decade. The last time I wore heels to a social gathering, they'd belonged to my mother. She'd called them occasion shoes, black suede, modest height, worn only to funerals and scholarship banquets. Those shoes were long gone. So I stood in front of my closet the night before Mallory's cocktail party and considered what statement, if any, I wanted to make. I wasn't interested in outshining her. That was never the point. I just didn't want to show up looking like what she expected. Pity bait. The washed-out sister from the suburbs with calloused hands and tired eyes, grateful for an hors d'oeuvre and a conversation with someone's bored husband. No. I chose a navy wrap dress I'd bought years ago for no occasion at all. Mid-length, soft fabric, tailored enough to move with me, but not scream for attention. I polished my boots, trimmed my nails, and pulled my hair back in a low twist. The kind of quiet presentation that said, "I'm not here to compete, but I am not invisible." On my way out, I grabbed a small brown paper bag from the counter. Inside, a pack of locally roasted coffee beans from a place we used to visit together as kids. Mallory had loved the smell, used to grind the beans just to inhale the aroma. I didn't know if she still drank it, or if she'd scoff at the gift, but that wasn't the point. It was something real, and real had been scarce between us for too long. The event was held on the rooftop of the Pentwell building downtown, a glass monolith with a security desk that required a badge and a last name. I gave mine, and the receptionist smiled, as if surprised I belonged. The elevator rose slowly, floor by floor, offering a perfect view of the city's skyline, unraveling behind me. Lights blurred into one another. Cars looked like circuits pulsing through asphalt. When the doors opened, I stepped into curated elegance. String lights crisscrossed above like constellations someone had arranged by hand. Soft music drifted from a live quartet tucked behind a ficus wall. Servers in monochrome passed around crystal flutes and truffled skewers. The air smelled like ambition and carefully measured cologne. Mallory was already performing. I spotted her near the bar, flanked by men in fitted suits and women with glassy eyes. Her laugh was louder than necessary, her posture rehearsed. She wore a white asymmetrical dress with structured shoulders and heels that dared gravity to blink. When she moved, people followed. When she smiled, they mirrored. It took her 5 minutes to notice me. I didn't mind. I stayed near the edge, accepted a glass of sparkling water, and nodded politely to a stranger who mistook me for catering staff. I was used to being misread. But eventually, Mallory's gaze caught mine and widened. She approached with arms half spread, like a politician who'd just spotted a donor. "Delaney," she said, drawing out the vowels. "You came." Heads turned. A few people smiled politely. Others glanced, then dismissed. I returned the greeting with a calm nod. "Of course. I wasn't sure you'd actually show," she said, louder than needed. "Everyone, this is my sister." She let that hang for a beat too long. "This is Delaney. She runs a shop." I watched her weigh the word before using it. She's kind of a whiz with hardware. You know, small electronics, repairs. I always say she's like a walking warranty. A few chuckled. One man said, "Oh, cool. Like phones and stuff?" Mallory added quickly, "Well, not phones exactly. More like household stuff. She can fix a toaster like it's heart surgery." More laughter. I smiled politely, held my glass steady. The paper bag with the coffee beans rested neatly in my other hand. I didn't respond, because every word Mallory said wasn't meant to insult, at least not directly. It was the kind of commentary that danced just close enough to condescension to let her deny it if challenged. I've seen those performances before. The sibling subtlety Olympics. Who has the better job, the better clothes, the better vocabulary? She was winning. Until she wasn't. The elevator chimed. It wasn't loud, just a small bell. But the rooftop changed. People didn't go silent, exactly. But their tone dropped half a register. You could feel it, like a draft passing through velvet. Then she appeared. Adrienne Locke. founder and CEO of Brightcore Energy. 50-ish, tall, silver hair sculpted into a braid crown, tailored burgundy pantsuit, low heels, and no jewelry except a black watch with a minimalist face. She didn't walk. She moved like gravity adjusted for her. People straightened, glasses lowered, conversations paused mid-sentence. Mallory instinctively turned, smoothing her dress. Her smile brightened like someone had flipped a switch behind her eyes. Adrian didn't look at her. She walked past 3 executives, skirted the bar, and scanned the room once. Then her gaze landed on me, and she smiled. "Delaney," she said warmly, "I've been hoping I'd meet you in person." It was the kind of moment that doesn't echo, it rings. A hush fell, not because anyone said so, but because no one wanted to miss what came next. Mallory froze. I straightened, calmly shook Adrian's hand. "Likewise," I said. Adrian turned slightly toward the onlookers, then to Mallory. "Your sister's work is the reason our logistics team has maintained 97% equipment turnaround this year," she said evenly. "I assume you knew she was the subcontractor behind NovaStream's repair flow?" Mallory's mouth opened, then closed. I thought that was a third-party vendor." Adrian nodded. "It is, but HeartFix Solutions is their repair partner. She's been solving problems your diagnostics teams couldn't even identify." She looked back at me. "Quiet consistency is rare, thank you." And just like that, the axis tilted. Mallory's carefully curated world stuttered in place, and I stood there, silent, still, not with triumph, but with clarity. Not all victories are loud. Some just walk in, uninvited, and rearrange the room. Mallory didn't speak for several seconds. In her world, seconds were long enough to craft an answer, to pivot, to recover. But this time, there was no script to fall back on. No slide deck, no promotional tone, no carefully controlled message to redirect the moment. She blinked. Once, twice. Then forced a smile that didn't make it to her eyes. "Well," she said too brightly, "I had no idea. That's surprising." Adrian Locke had already turned to greet someone else, leaving behind a vacuum of attention where Mallory had once stood comfortably. Around us, people had resumed conversation, but something was different. A new hum had entered the air. People were looking at me with curiosity, not dismissal. I stepped toward the snack table, my glass still in hand. I hadn't taken a sip in over 10 minutes. Mallory followed. She didn't lead this time. She moved just behind my right shoulder, her voice lower now. "You could have told me." I turned, not harshly, just directly. "Would it have changed anything?" She flinched. "That's not fair," she said. I tilted my head. "Isn't it?" For once, there was no comeback. No playful eye roll, just the faint tremor of someone realizing they hadn't been seeing clearly for a very long time. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," she added. "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "You just didn't expect it to backfire." Her mouth opened, but no sound followed. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. That wasn't why I was there. I hadn't come to humiliate her. I'd simply shown up. She was the one who turned the spotlight on me, thinking she controlled the wattage. I let the silence stretch. "I worked hard to get here," she said after a long pause. "I did everything right. I climbed." "I know," I replied. "You were always climbing." She looked confused. "You make that sound like a bad thing." "It's not," I said. "But climbing and building aren't the same." She stared at me like she was trying to decipher a foreign language she should have learned years ago. "I guess I just thought, you gave up," she finally whispered. I nodded slowly. A lot of people did. She shifted her weight. Her polished confidence had thinned at the edges. She was gripping the rim of her wineglass like it anchored her to something still solid. "I didn't settle," I continued. "I rebuilt." Mallory looked away. I let her. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done carrying the weight of how she chose to see me. It wasn't my burden anymore. That night on the rooftop wasn't about winning. It wasn't about power plays or quiet revenge. It was about truth. Undeniable, unpolished, and overdue. And truth when it finally arrives, doesn't need permission. It walks in and rearranges the room. Underscore 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 later. As the crowd thinned and the quartet packed up their instruments, I stood near the edge of the glass rail and looked out over the city. Lights blinked in office towers. Red taillights crawled down avenues like slow-moving blood. Everything looked cleaner from above. Mallory approached again. This time, slower. Not performative. Real. "Do you still have that shop?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. She already knew the answer. That wasn't what she was really asking. So I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the small gift I'd brought, the brown paper package of coffee beans. "I thought you might still like this," I said, holding it out. She took it, surprised. "I haven't had this brand in years. You used to say it smelled like mornings didn't suck." A soft laugh escaped her, tired, honest. "I forgot I used to say that. Not everything worth keeping gets posted," I said. She nodded. Then she asked the question I never expected. "Do you like what you do?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She looked at the coffee in her hand. "I think I spent so long trying to impress people who never even noticed. I didn't realize I'd stopped noticing people like you." "Not people like me," I corrected. "Just me." She winced, then nodded. "Fair." "I don't need your apology, Mallory," I said. "I don't need anything from you." "I know," she said quietly. "That's what makes it worse." I turned to leave, but she stopped me. "Delaney," she said, voice steadying, "I really am sorry." I believed her, but belief doesn't erase history. It just softens its grip. So I nodded and said the only thing that mattered: do better. She stood there, holding the coffee like it was something fragile. And for once, she didn't look like the one with all the answers. As I rode the elevator down, I pulled Adrian's business card from my coat pocket. It was weighty, thick, embossed. I didn't look at the back. I didn't need to. I knew what it meant. It wasn't validation. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't a promotion or a pivot point. It was a mirror. And I'd already seen what I needed to see. The elevator ride down was silent, save for the soft hum of motion and the faint echo of string instruments fading behind me. I held Adrian's card between two fingers, not tightly, not like something precious, but like a leaf caught in a breeze. Just long enough to feel it, then let it go. The lobby was mostly empty when I stepped out, and I didn't rush to my car. Instead, I sat on a bench near the fountain outside the building, watching the water flicker under artificial lights. The air smelled faintly of concrete and citrus cologne, leftovers from the men who had walked by with polished shoes and rushed handshakes. I heard footsteps approach. Mallory didn't sit right away. She stood beside the bench, uncertain. She looked smaller than usual, not physically, but emotionally, like the edges of her certainty had curled inward. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I nodded. She sat. Neither of us said anything for a while. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It wasn't the kind that pressed against your ribs or scraped your throat. It was the kind that asked for space, that gave room for breathing. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't know who you were anymore." I stayed quiet. I thought I did. I had this version of you in my head. The dropout, the fixer, the one who settled. And I kept that version because it made me feel like I'd done something different, something better. I looked over at her. "And now?" She exhaled through her nose. "Now I feel like a fraud." I tilted my head. "You're not a fraud, Mallory. You're just late." She laughed, short and sharp. "I deserve that." I didn't disagree. "You know," she said, eyes on the fountain, "when you left school, I told myself you just couldn't handle the pressure. I needed that story to make sense of why you didn't come back. I never asked why. I just filled in the gaps. People always do, I said. It's easier than looking too closely. She nodded. But now I can't stop seeing the gaps. All the things I never asked, never wanted to know. I let that land. I wasn't going to rush to comfort her. This wasn't that kind of story. When did you start working with NovaStream? She asked. About 3 years ago, I said. Small batch at first, then steady. So all this time you were fixing your company's back-end failures? Yes. And you didn't say anything? To who? You? The sister who introduced me like I was an amusing side hobby? She looked down. I didn't mean it that way. You meant it exactly that way. She flinched again. But here's the thing, I continued, voice level. You didn't say those things because you hated me. You said them because you didn't see me. She looked up. You couldn't. I wasn't wearing a title or carrying a nameplate. I wasn't measurable in your world, so I didn't register. I see you now, she said quietly. I know, I replied, but that's not the part that matters. What does? That I didn't need you to. She blinked. That's what tonight really was, I said. Not a reckoning, not a victory lap, just proof that I exist beyond how you define me. The wind shifted slightly, lifting the edge of her hair. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. I smiled faintly. Good. Maybe that's the first honest thing you've said all night. We sat in silence again. She fidgeted with the sleeve of her dress. I kept thinking I needed to win, that every dinner, every conversation with Dad, every family holiday, it was a scoreboard. Your name faded, mine rose. I liked the space that gave me. It made me feel chosen. And now? I feel like I chose the wrong prize. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She wasn't angling or filtering. She was just present. I think we both survived in the only ways we knew how, I said. You climbed. I built. But survival's not the same as connection. She nodded slowly. I don't expect us to go back, I added. This isn't some after-school special. We're not suddenly braid each other's hair close. She snorted. Thank God. But I wouldn't mind. I paused. I wouldn't mind starting something more honest. She looked at me. Like what? Like asking real questions, I said. Not assuming, not comparing. Just showing up. Her face softened. Okay. The fountain gurgled beside us, steady and low. I meant what I said earlier, she added. I am sorry. I believe you, I said. And I know that doesn't fix anything. It doesn't need to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's a start. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and hesitated. Can I text you sometime? Not about work. Just random stuff? I smirked. Sure. Start with something harmless, like thermostat problems. She laughed. It felt strange. New. Not the brittle kind of laughter we'd shared over dry turkey at Thanksgiving, but something warmer, something earned. We stood. She looked like she wanted to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she offered a small wave and walked toward her car. I watched her go. Not with longing, with closure, and maybe the smallest crack of a new beginning. I never took Adrian's job offer. Her card rests in the second drawer of my shop's back office. It's tucked beneath a stack of shipping receipts and a folded blueprint I sketched once when we considered expanding the workspace. I haven't laminated it, haven't framed it. I just keep it there, where things of quiet significance tend to live. I look at it from time to time. Not to remember the night she handed it to me, but to remind myself that I didn't need it to prove anything, because I didn't walk into that rooftop hoping for validation, and I didn't leave it carrying revenge. What I carried instead was something harder to earn. Balance. The shop is busier now. There's a new shelf for refurbished equipment, a modest waiting list for complex repairs. We take our time. We don't rush. I still brew free coffee in the corner, and it still tastes like it always has. Cheap, but honest. People come in with more than broken things. They come in with stories, memories, guilt, hope. Sometimes they leave lighter. Sometimes they just leave quieter. That's enough. Last week, a woman brought in her mother's cassette player, said it hadn't worked since 2002, but still smelled like Sunday mornings. When I got it playing again, she cried. Not over the sound quality, but over the voice on the tape. It's moments like that, unseen by most, that keep me rooted. They're the kind of victories no title chase or rooftop toast can match. Mallory still checks in now and then, not performatively, not out of guilt, just as a sister trying to relearn what that even means. She hasn't tried to explain away what happened. That's the part I respect most. She just shows up more honestly now, sometimes with questions about budgeting, sometimes to ask how to rewire a light fixture. I answer. Not because I owe her, not because I need anything in return, but because letting go doesn't always mean walking away. I've stopped trying to correct the narrative, stopped trying to convince anyone of my worth, because worth, real worth, never hinges on someone else's understanding. It just is. And now, when someone asks me what I do, I don't hesitate. I don't underplay it. I don't brace for the laugh. I look them in the eye and say it plainly. I fix what's broken. And I don't just mean appliances.